Before I bring Sara on the air, let me introduce you to her briefly. Sara Delpasand is a motivational speaker, educator, and activist. She is an intercultural pedagogue and certified life and career coach. She specializes in working with at-risk youth aged 16 to 24, and she has over 15 years of experience working with youth. She serves as an advisor and coach both in Scandinavia and the United States, and she currently lives in Los Angeles. Sara, thank you for joining me tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, great. We're excited to have you here. And we are going to talk about the I in life, a visionary understanding of who you are, where you are going, and how to get there, which is the book that you wrote. But before we get into the content of the book, I think it's nice that I get to have you here. I talk about a book every single week, but I don't usually get to talk to the author about what their process was in writing the book, what their inspiration. So I thought maybe I could take advantage of that opportunity. And first we can talk a bit about that. So what inspired you, or what was your process in writing the I in life?
Well, it started about 12 years ago. I was actively working with youth. I had helped start up a youth facility back home in Stockholm, Sweden, where I grew up, and was actively working with youth, 16 to 24-year-olds. And I experienced a lot of times difficulties in coaching them when it came to their career paths. They had a hard time transitioning into adulthood because they didn't know, who they were and what they wanted to do. It was a big question, and it was a loaded question. And so did my research and continued my education and created this workshop. It was a career coaching workshop that ended up being very successful and providing tools for these youth to help answer, important questions like, who am I? What are my values? What are my interests?
Yeah. And you said it was an issue for the youth there in Sweden, but I think that's the issue for youth around the world.
Absolutely.
I think always it's been the case, but even more now because people have more choice in what they do for a career, which is a good and a bad thing. The good thing is you get the power to choose what you want to do. You get that authority to figure that out for yourself and live your life. But then that's kind of the flip side is the negative too, that you now have to choose and figure out what you want to do. Yes. With power comes responsibility. With freedom comes responsibility. So I think a lot of youth, they get to that age like, wait, what do I want to do? What am I supposed to do? What is life supposed to look like for me? And most of them don't have that guidance. And it seems like you came in to try to help them find their own path.
Yes, absolutely. And the first thing that we did was to shift the question, what do I want to do, to what do I have to give? And that became a huge change where it wasn't about taking or being given something. It was about what do I have to give of myself? What is my talent? So the first question was, what do I have to give? And then it became, where do I want to place that?
Right. I think that's awesome because I think that's something I get to talk about on this show too. I think that change of that focus, especially, I think it's true of everyone, but new research is showing that the youth, the tweens, like the teenagers, more than anything in life right now, they want to be famous. More than even happiness or even financial success, they choose fame. And even when we look at money, which most people are motivated by in their careers, it's about taking and receiving. And I think that shift and recognize that true happiness comes from giving your gift, giving who you are.
Yes.
I think it's so important to get them to realize that it's not about trying to get what you want. It's about giving what you have.
And I think, we're obligated to do so, which, especially with working with at-risk youth, it's, we have this thing of, providing something for our youth, saying that, so, nurturing them, saying, okay, but what do you want to do? How can I give that to you as a parent or as a leader or a teacher? But to put that on them, saying, you have so much to give. Let's figure that out. What do you have to give? What is your talent? What are you passionate about? How can you give that? Which is so important because that's why ultimately we're here. Without getting too spiritual, but I definitely believe that there's a greater purpose to why Farid Holakoee is talented in his way, and because you're meant to serve that. And the reason why I'm talented in my way is because I'm meant to serve that. And I feel like all the animal kingdom knows this and practices this. Everybody gives of themselves until they, pass or pass on. But we are here to take Human beings are like, what can I get from this world? And then leaves them very empty.
Absolutely. The idea would seem that if you fill yourself up with more what we think is things, you would get more full, but we see that that's not the case. Living a full life is actually the more you give, you're given like this full cup that's everything you have, gifts, talents, love. And our job is to empty that cup. So when you leave this world, you're basically an empty vessel. You've given everything of yourself, and that would be the truly fulfilled, happy, successful life.
And you get anxiety over never receiving, because you will never receive that.
Right.
And when it's about money, when it's about prestige, it's very empty.
Absolutely.
And it's a sense of relief knowing that all you have to do is just give. I mean, share your talent to one person, to a community, to the world. It doesn't matter.
Right.
But as long as you're sharing, you're living out your purpose. So you and me sitting here doing exactly what we're meant to do, because it's based on our natural talent and passion, and we've worked on our skills, and we are doing exactly what we're supposed to do. It becomes purposeful.
Something else you mentioned I liked that you talked about in the book, people sometimes think, working hard is good and you should try to be the best that you can be kind of for you. But actually I feel like, and you mentioned the book, you owe it to the world to be the best at whatever it is that you do. You owe it to the world to work hard at your craft and become the best that you can be at.
Absolutely. I think that doing your best, I would like to describe it as just giving of yourself. So just by me writing this book doesn't make me the best author or this is not the best self-help book. It just means that I am doing what I'm meant to do.
It was your self-help book.
Exactly. Yeah, so I am doing what I'm supposed to do, sharing it, and with the intention of helping.
Absolutely.
And that is it.
Yeah.
And I don't have to do anything else. So whether one person read it and said, oh, this, helped me, or 100 million people reads it and say, this is a great book, it doesn't matter for me, because I lived my purpose by just putting it into action.
So it seems like your work with the youth definitely inspired, or at least was part of the inspiration of writing this book.
It was the foundation. That's how I stumbled upon this career coaching method and these tools. And then as life happens, I actually ended up going through a huge transition in my life, where I moved from Stockholm, Sweden, to the big city of LA, and I found myself, completely confused, didn't know what I was going to do professionally. I was aligned culturally with the city and the state. I didn't have any language barriers. I had my degree from here. Completely tricked me. Came here, moved here, and then all of a sudden I'm supposed to do what I did back home, and it didn't work. I didn't feel like it was right anymore. But this is what's important. Because I knew what I had to give, I knew where I could start looking. So ironically, I went through my stuff and I found the career coaching tools, and I sat down and I started working, asking myself the same questions that I had asked at-risk youth previously. And the whole time I was like, oh my God, this is such a experience, being someone's coach. And then now I'm, having to do it myself, which is also a lesson for everybody. I think everybody should stop and ask themselves why they do what they do every few years or so. This made me stop. I asked myself, who is Sara here? And so I started writing a letter to my younger self in the hopes of creating clarity for her, meaning me now, today. And as I was doing that, I had this realization that, okay, this is it. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to write a book. I didn't dare to say book, though. It took me a while to say the book. I'm going to write this down, I said. And then hopefully I'll share it with as many people as possible. People need to do this. We all need to just stop. If I needed to do this, because I thought I knew what I was going to do always. I've been so passionate all my life that I've just nothing fazed me. I know what I'm doing. And a lot of times when I work with youth and they didn't know, it was so weird to me. How can you not know? Because I was always burning with, having mentoring groups in high school, being so actively giving of this. So that definitely put
I can see that.
Put some perspective into my reality.
Right. And you talk about sharing it, and share it you did. It's the first chapter of your book, The I in Life, that people can check out. So we're going to talk more about the content of the book, but I thought it was really interesting what you shared about your own experience. And it's tough, people can have their careers or be very established, but moving, you moved from Stockholm here, you can move from Vienna here to the United States or some other city or country. And it's a big transition trying to figure out, who am I now here? You can't have some even identity crises of sorts and
Absolutely.
figuring out yourself, your gift. And
The
even if you knew
30-year
your
crisis.
gift, how do I translate my gift into a new place and figure that out, which it seems like something you went through, but it seems like that also inspired and informed you in a way to write this book, I think.
Absolutely.
Even with that own personal perspective. And I think throughout the book,
Exactly.
your personal touch is in the book, which I think is really great. And maybe after the break, maybe you can tell us more about what inspired you to actually get this to be a book. And then we can talk about the book itself, which I think people will find really interesting.
Right.
And hopefully they can check it out. Again, I'm joined by the author of The Iron Life, Sara Delpasand. You're listening to In Session with Dr. Farid Holakouee. We'll be right back. And Sara, before the break, you were telling us a bit about your process in writing the book. But even I know in talking to you, and you kind of alluded to it in the previous segment, that actually making it a book and publishing it, you had your own process and challenges personally to kind of get it to that point. Maybe you can tell us a bit about that, because I know for everyone, there's probably goals they have in their personal life and their careers that maybe they think I never can do that, or can I? And there's self-doubt and all these things that come into play. But I think it's really cool that you went forward and you said, you know what, I'm going to actually make this a book. And here we are, and I'm holding it in my hand because you did that. So maybe you can tell us a bit about that, your own personal process of getting it to become a book.
Yes. Well, first of all, anybody that's gone through a transition in life, knows how hard it is to, accept the shift that's about to happen. It's a big responsibility. It's a fear of the unknown, all of the above. And on top of that, you're writing a so-called book and you're supposed to put it out there like something, And so you're sitting there. I was sitting there with myself saying, is this my ego? Or is it me? Do I really have a message? Is this important? And that's why it's important to surround yourself with good people that help give you that perspective, saying, you know what, this is important and you should put it out there and you should do it. It's a good support system, which I'm blessed enough to have. And also, here I am writing a book and coaching other people, saying that you have an obligation to serve your purpose, serve your talent, serve your abilities and skills in the way that is authentic to you. Not follow the path that, society or your family wants or thinks it's better for you to do. But really, really in your core believe that, at the end of the day, you are serving your purpose and that's going to be good. That will be good enough, So I accepted the challenge of putting it out there. Didn't say a word to anybody. I didn't dare to say, hey, I'm writing a book. That was very intimidating for me, especially because I lived in a new city where people didn't know me really. And I was making new friends and, my network was all new people. So I was very insecure about that. But so the day I actually was at the American Book Expo in New York, publishing it, putting it on Facebook, and everybody was like very stunned, like, oh my God, oh, you're publishing a book. How great is that? And it was obviously very, very supportive. But it was an introvert journey for me. And I sat with it myself and I really wanted to, make sure that I was okay with it. Still to this day, it's been 6 months since I published it. I didn't jump into a PR and marketing thing. I really let it take its own journey and didn't want to do anything big, quote unquote. It has its life of its own. And I really trust in the process that it will reach and do what it's supposed to do. I don't have a need for it to be in a certain way.
Yeah. Well, I think, it's still in its journey. It's still figuring out. I hope you do continue to publicize it so it does reach as many people as possible. I thought it was interesting what you said about even that self-doubt that came in of, is this my ego? And I think that's something that people, it's so complex because we can trick ourselves in so many ways. I think the human mind is amazing at rationalizing almost any conclusion it wants. And, that's something that fascinates me, just even reflecting on myself, but even in therapy, you see it all the time. But we can have that idea of, should I be doing this or not? Do I deserve this or not?
Exactly. Do I deserve this is a really good thing.
And that's a big one for a lot of people, that idea of, do I deserve the success that maybe I want? So we very often have this complex relationships, like two sides of the coin. We fear and we wish the same thing. I wish for success, but I also fear it for bunch of reasons which we won't jump into. But even the title of the book, which I really think is nice, The I in Life, and of course the word life has I in it, but then finding your personal I. I think it's an interesting thing we see in kind of pop psychology or in self-help books, this idea that the ego is a bad thing, or that focusing on yourself is a bad thing. It's almost been this reaction to selfishness. And I think sometimes I see a problem with that, where people are losing sight that to be yourself and to find yourself and to love yourself and all those things are actually very good and healthy things and necessary things.
Yes.
And this idea that if I focus on me, I'm doing something bad, or if I love myself, that's ego or something negative, when, that's not the same thing.
Yes.
So I think it's important that the title itself I like. It's like finding the I in life. We have this responsibility, and it's a good thing to figure out who you are and what your gifts are. And even that, what are my gifts? Well, I want to be humble and not talk about my talents and my skills and my abilities and my gifts. Where it's like, no, it's everyone has them and it's wonderful. And then again, it's not that you own them. No. You then share them to the world.
Exactly.
So
and you can improve them as you're going. Yes.
Right. Yeah. So I like the title itself, I think, is really cool. But, I like that you shared your own process and the vulnerability you expressed, that it wasn't like, oh, yeah, because I think people, when they see a book, like, oh, yeah, she wrote a book, but they don't know what went into it, the self-doubt that maybe this wasn't going to happen. It wasn't inevitable that this would be a book. You had to make some huge steps, risks, be vulnerable, get support, do a bunch of things to actually make it happen. Yes. And I hope listeners, and even just me, myself, I'm taking it into to remember that you're going to have goals that maybe seem impossible, or you doubt yourself, or you're not sure if you deserve it or can do it.
Yes.
But to have that belief and go for it. And also, you mentioned the process. It wasn't like your book was going to be perfect, because there's no such thing. And if you wait till something is perfect, you'll never do it.
Yes.
And so you wrote your book, and then, and here it is. But if you waited till, well, I'm going to read for 30 more years and then write it someday, or I'm not ready yet, which is another rationalization people have, you would have never had this book, and then people wouldn't get to enjoy it at this point. So I think that's pretty cool.
And especially being an author, people think that, oh my God, so how much wisdom do you have? And for me, it took a lot for me to let go of that it doesn't mean that I'm the wisest, but this is a part of a journey that I have that helped me and have helped so many young kids out there, that has been a part of these workshops that I've worked with so many years. And I needed to trust that, the whole part of the book, give of yourself, serve your talent, that was repeatedly in my head. So I have to practice now what I'm preaching and put it out there. And so while, when you're doing something like this, when you're stepping outside of your comfort zone, you're completely naked, vulnerable, sometimes humiliated in a sense of just, oh, here I am, and letting people judge you for who you really, really are. So you're not in a role. I am not in a role writing this book or being an author of this book. This is me. So, and you become so fearful of the reactions, so you're here naked, vulnerable, like completely like, here I am, and letting people take that with the intention of sharing. And then all of a sudden something very beautiful happens. Everybody turns out to be so supportive. Everybody loves it. Everybody wants to be there for you because they see and understand the vulnerability of you putting yourself out there. It's not fake.
No. Well, especially the people I think that care about you are going to respond in that way. And I think they genuinely mean it.
Yes. And it became something so great for me because I thought it was going to be the opposite.
Right.
I thought here the critics are at the American Book Expo, and they will be, and everybody was just like, I actually had the opportunity to meet Robert Kiyosaki, who had a booth next to ours at the booth. And he's like, oh, your first book, congratulations. This is so great. Everybody has an understanding because everybody's been there, friends, family, anybody. I wrote a book. Oh my God, that's such a big step. Yes. I mean, everybody acknowledges
and it
that.
is a big step. Absolutely it is. And I think that's why I like getting to hear you share your process, because, again, when people see a finished product, and you hear people that make movies or they have other kinds of endeavors that take a long time, people just see the final product, okay, cool, but they don't realize the blood, sweat, and tears and years and maybe doubts and all the other things that went into it. But one thing I'll add is, I'm glad you've had that type of support. I'm sure you have. But, you might not always, just for, you're not going to get necessarily everyone to like what you're doing always. So anyone hearing this, you might get people that aren't supportive, even close people, unfortunately. I'm glad you've had that benefit. But you sometimes will have critics close to you, distant from you. You know, I've gotten messages on Facebook, on social media before that most overwhelmingly so sweet
Positive,
and kind and positive, and I'm so grateful for people saying that. But sometimes you don't. You know, they might not always be that positive, and that kind of goes back to that part of believing in yourself and believing in your gift. And that's why I think, you know, we all do have that self-doubt. Almost never completely goes away.
No.
But we have to have within ourselves, and hopefully around with some loved ones around us, enough to overcome that personal doubt and the doubt from the outside to continue pushing and pursuing our dream and putting our gift out there.
Yes.
That if we let the doubt win, then we don't share our gift, and that's a very sad thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's such a shame. And people have to know it, and people have to experience it. You have to experience it.
Exactly. Right.
You know, being aligned and just sharing it. And it's just a euphoric feeling. And another thing in this process was also, I get the question all the time, like, oh, I really want to write a book. Where do I start? What do I do? Write the book. Have you written anything? Just a few pages here and there. Well, just write it.
Yeah.
Just share your story. People get into like, oh, the technicality of it, but I just don't think it's relevant. I just think share your message through a book, through the work that you do, starting a business, whatever it is. Just do it. Put it in action. And then as you're going, it will take its own path and its own journey, and you'll learn and you'll grow. And another thing, I'm not obsessed with the outcome anymore. You know, I am completely in the journey. Like, I'm just excited about what it has to offer. And I've said it before. And another thing is, this is volume 1. If I feel like, oh, there's something that needs to been taken away or added to, I'm perfectly fine.
Yeah.
I'm kind of like in a gray zone with it.
Right. Well, yeah, you're, I'm sure, I've even felt it in the few years I've done this show. Some of my ideas have evolved, and I hope they always do, because I want to refine them, make them better, learn, reflect, all of that. So yeah, it's very possible in a few years, there's things in this book that you won't perfectly agree with, and maybe you want to write something else to add to that. But again, to wait till everything is finished evolving, there's no such thing, because evolution is a constant process. Either you're growing or you're dying. You know, you kind of have to let your ideas grow, and you can't wait till you're finished with them to be, okay, now I'm going to write my book, because then you would, you know, wait for a long time. But something you mentioned, I think, is so interesting, that people, because of, I think, the anxiety that comes with perfectionism and the things we talked about before, they can be, quote unquote, preparing their whole life to do the thing, but they never actually do the thing, you know?
Yes.
Well, no, I got to read for another 20 years before I can write the book, or I have to, you know, really get myself to the right place to do this or to do that, or put myself out there in that way, and not recognizing that that's their own way of letting the doubt win, or letting the anxiety win. Right. And like you said, just do it. You just have to go for it and start the actions. And people, you know, I hear this from my brother, works a lot in the business consulting type field, and he's told me about how, you know, the amount of experience you get from doing something or understanding is always going to be more than even if you do years of researching the business, let's say, or the field. Absolutely. So you have to do it and then see what happens, and you learn so much that then you can go forward. But if you sit there and say, well, we're not going to launch our business till we know everything about everything, you'll never start your business, and it'll never actually happen. So I think, taking action is the most important thing.
Absolutely. 2 things. You're obligated to figure out what you have to give, and then for yourself, that you're obligated to yourself to do so. The second thing is you're obligated to share it for others.
Right.
You know, so the first obligation is toward yourself. The second obligation is towards others, because they deserve to receive what you have to give in any perspective.
Right. Yeah. I think, you know, sometimes when you know, it can be in anything, but an easy one for me, sometimes you see someone who, like, let's say, sings beautifully, and it's just like gorgeous, and it's moving people, and it's so lovely, and you think, it would be such a shame if that person didn't share that gift with the world. Like, it's so beautiful. And of course, some gifts like that are very clear and present, but everyone has a gift, and it's going to be different ways. So like you said, it's a shame to not share that with the world. And that's part of what this book, you know, maybe we could talk a bit about the book. This book is about helping people find that I in life, what is their gift, and then how to cultivate it, develop it, and then eventually share it. And, you know, you mentioned how you've worked so much with youth, but I read this book, and I did the exercises, and I found it helpful too. So maybe you can talk about that. Who is the audience of this book?
Well, as I said, the irony of this whole thing is it started as a coaching for at-risk youth, which, you know, anybody outside of the norm. I consider myself outside of the norm. I mean, everybody's outside of the norm. But it started there, but then it transitioned into me personally needing the help in my early, I was literally 30 years old when I desperately needed these tools. So absolutely, I've gotten great responses from readers that are in their 60s, females, males, entrepreneurs, people that are, on their path and doing what they, set out to do initially. But I think ultimately everybody has to stop and ask themselves, why am I doing what I'm doing? How did I get started? Am I still doing what I was intentionally wanting to do, years ago? And when I sit with people that are, having successful businesses, and we go through exercise number 1, what are your values? Top value is always family, which ironically, they have 0 time for family. And so it's contradicting, it's very contradicting. Right. And so the work of this book then becomes, okay, so if I value my family and I'm spending 0 time, or very little time with my family, how am I being aligned with how am I having this balance in life that I, or the second one, vacation, time for myself. How much time do you have for yourself? Very little, and so on and so forth. Or my interest is, playing music. I like to play the guitar. I never have time to play the guitar. And just why? So we are always contradicting ourselves in life. We're saying we want to do things, or we, right, like to have things, and we don't. And so this book is definitely a reminder of who we are at all times.
Yeah, actually, I play guitar, and I heard you say, my gosh, I haven't played for a little bit. I should play pretty soon, because it is a good feeling. But I think that's so true, and that's why I was asking, because I felt like the answer would be that the book is good for all ages, because you're never done realigning yourself with who you are and what you intend, or what you intended your life to look like, or first even realizing, what are my values? Who am I? Who do I want to be? What do I want my life to look like? And if you kind of let life just happen to you, I think most people will find that unfortunately they won't live the life they actually want to live.
They will someday.
Maybe they won't.
They're like putting it off.
Yeah, they can hope. They're thinking they will, or they might not even realize what they want. And that's why I think the book is good to really, first you got to say, what do I want? Yes. What's important to me? Because I don't think most people reflect on that. And maybe after the break we can talk about the rest of the book and even touch on that some more, because I think, it's important for everyone at any age to make sure they're living the life they want to live, to find their I in life. And I'm joined by the author, Sara Delpasand, of that book, The I in Life. And before the break, you were talking about, or I asked you about who the book really is geared towards, and you really did mention how it can be, really it's for everyone. But maybe you can elaborate on that, because we were talking during the break about how even the same person could read this book twice and have a different experience with it.
Absolutely. I know I will. I will probably go back to this after I have kids, and then I will do it, when the kids are old enough and I can fully go back to having a career. And, in my 40s, I'm sure I'll think of things differently and value other things that I do today, naturally. And so I definitely think this is for everyone that is in the search of creating clarity on who they are and what they have to give.
I think that's maybe, and that use that word clarity throughout the book a lot. And I think maybe that's a theme of the book, or one of the purposes, at least from my experience of reading the book, was to help people gain clarity into themselves, what they value, what their talents and skills are, and get that clarity in living the life they want to live, figuring out that the I in their life. And that's why I think people, listeners, if they get the chance to read the book, and I hope they will, that's something that they can get. And it's very much an interactive book.
Yes.
So you share a lot of your own insights and wisdom throughout the book, but a lot more of it is about the work people put into the book.
Yes. I'm so happy you brought that up.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of thought that went into the book. I wrote it less than 100 pages. Because I really needed the readers to finish reading this book, because I know that the percentage of people that read books are very low, and actually finish books are even lower. So only 20 pages of the book is the personal letter. The rest of the book is your professional diary. You help write this book. So with writing everything about yourself, filling out the blanks, this is your book. So you are ultimately a co-writer with me, helping finish the book. And one of the reasons why I've asked everybody that have, gotten the book, the friends and family foremost, to send me a selfie with the book is to give space to this book, because this book is that, I don't know, help me fill in the blank. Like, just, it's all of us.
Yeah. Well, I think that's, it's interesting because you say that it works so well with the title of the book, but the I in life and the person reading the book is, like you're saying, co-author of the book. They're writing, everyone's book is going to be different. And so for me, I had that experience too. I was, going through the exercises and, maybe just reevaluate some things, think about some things about myself, my life, what I am doing, what I'm not doing in my life, what I'd want more of, maybe what I want less of.
Yes.
Which I think, as you were mentioning before, there's never a time where we should stop doing that. For the rest of our lives, we should be constantly reevaluating, looking at our lives, and making sure we're on a path we want to be on. But I think especially for the youth who might feel, lost or totally confused and feel like they have no idea of what they want their life to look like, I think it can be really important for them to do that. And so I know you mentioned that in a way the underlying intention is to the youth, but really this book is for everyone. But especially I think this can be interesting, so because a parent might be listening and saying, I want my kid to read this book, which I hope they are having that thought, because especially I hope what they realize is, and this is something you and I talked about in one of the breaks, was that it's their I in life, right?
Yes.
So I think a lot of times parents think they're supposed to tell their kids how to live their life, but what we really have to do is give the environment for our children to choose and recognize their gifts and then live their I in life.
Yes.
So have you had experiences from readers, who've shared that with you, parents, and maybe even how parents and teens could connect over this book?
Absolutely. I think the biggest concern of parents is they don't know how to guide them, or oftentimes then tell them, well, I think this is a great path for you, because they really want the best for their, kids, obviously. But a great thing is to give this as a gift to help create that clarity, meaning that this is a tool for me to use it, see how it works. I say it, and I will say it again. This is a professional diary. That means that it is very personal to me, or to the reader. So obviously it should be, respected that way and given that space. But if your child wants to share it with you, this is a great way of, communicating. What are your values? What are your interests? And they ultimately get help with the exercises to answer those questions. So I think this is a great tool for parents to help their teenagers and making that decision for themselves by just handing them the books and saying, hey, here you go. I think this is a great tool for you to use.
Yeah. And I think, that also takes giving your kid this book and then letting them figure it out is, I think, hard for lots of parents, Persian parents especially. They often think they know what their son or daughter should do, or what are the few career paths that they should choose from, and the rest they shouldn't even think about. But really, when you give your child this book, and really when you ask your kids to figure out their I in life, you have to recognize that they have to figure it out for themselves, and it's not something that you're going to determine, that you should influence, that you should judge for them, that for them to live their I in life means that you don't even know what it's going to look like, but you want them to be true to themselves.
Yes.
And that, I think, is hard for a lot of parents, because they tend to think, well, we know better than you, or we know what you're supposed to do. And that's what I like about your book, is that you explore lots of career paths, and, it's very expansive as far as the choices and the things you want people to think about.
And I do believe that until we share the essence of our purpose, which means sharing the talent and being very specifically aligned with that, we always will feel a void. So I would probably make a great... say something. I mean, it's just a pharmacist. I would probably make a great pharmacist. It's not that I can't, but it wouldn't be fulfilling my soul. I would always have the need for this communication and for what I do today. So I think that's why I think a lot of people have problems with their teenagers locking themselves in and stop communicating, is because, they're doing something because, they've been guided to do so, but they really don't stop to ask themselves why they're doing it, or, or what they really have to give.
Right.
And it's such a shame, because every child, all of our children are just born with such divine talents and capabilities and abilities and skills that it's just it's meant to shine through them, and so we have to allow and create that space for them to do so.
And you've talked throughout about sharing your gift with the world, which is those talents and abilities, and how you just talked about how that gift has to be your child's or each individual's unique gifts that is true to them. And it makes me think of when we receive gifts. And for me, if I look back on the gifts that were the most meaningful to me, they were the ones that really came from the person's heart. So they didn't have prestige or status or name brand that made it meaningful. What mattered was the person really put their unique heart into it. You know, their handwriting is on it, or they did something with their own hands to make, you know, let's say a picture and put it in something. And that made it so meaningful because it came from their heart. And so when we're giving our gift, whether it's, you know, gifts to each other, but giving our gift to the world, the way it becomes more genuine and more impactful is when it's that individual's unique gift from their heart, from who they are.
Yes, impactful. Like, that's the word. When it becomes, people say, why are people so successful? Why is, you know, all these, you know, Anthony Robbins, or, I mean, you know, Steve Jobs, everybody. It's because it's filled with intention based on their talent, abilities, capabilities, you know. And when you look into it, that's what they did. They served that, and then they shared it with the world, and then all of a sudden.
And I think the mistake that sometimes people make is they look at, let's say, Steve Jobs and say, okay, what made him successful? And they try to repeat his steps. And, you know, they try to walk in his shoes. But the problem is, I say, you're not supposed to walk in anyone else's shoes.
No.
You're supposed to go as far as you can in your own shoes. You're supposed to go on your own path as far as you can go. So they look at him and say, okay, what did he do? He did this and this. I'm going to do that. But they're not realizing he was living his path and his life. You have to find your path and then do that. But following his steps is not going to work.
And spiritually, you get lost because what you're meant, I mean, if I would tell you all you're obligated to do is figure out what God gave you and just share it, or what you were born with, the divinity, spiritual universe, whatever you want to call it, it is not a coincidence. Okay? That is not a coincidence. You have it. It's part of your essence. It's part of your personality. It's part of your nature, whatever you want. All you need to do is just share it. You know, explore it. Explore it. Start by exploring it. Figure it out for yourself. Don't even share it. I didn't share it. It took me 1.5 years to share it with my book. I took my time, and it's okay. You know, I still am, you know, taking my time with it. It's okay. But as long as I'm exploring, sharing bit by bit, I am aligned with my purpose. Spiritually, I am fulfilled.
Absolutely. And I think that's the thing, is like, it's your purpose. No one else can figure that for you. And that's why I think it's important for people, when they read a book like this, to reflect on themselves. It's almost impossible, but try not to be influenced by outside forces or influences, culture, family, especially, you know. You're a career coach. We were talking about this before, how unfortunately in every family there tends to be several career coaches that give unsolicited advice and almost demands sometimes on their children or family members if this is what you're supposed to do or what you have to do. And that's where we're coming back to the I in life, is figuring out your own personal path, because no one can live your life for you.
No.
And you can't live anyone else's life. You have to live your own. And a book like this helps people to really find their purpose. And, you know, you find it, but you're going to constantly be finding it. You're never done on that journey of figuring yourself out, of learning about yourself. I think if I look back 5 years ago into myself today, one, I've changed a lot, I've evolved a lot, but I know myself so much better than I did 5 years ago. And I know that process is going to continue, and I'm going to keep changing. So it's ongoing, you know, both are happening at the same time. But we're never done learning about ourselves and living that purpose.
Yes. And that's the beauty of life. And to be curious enough to go inwards and say, and to dare to ask.
Yes.
Because it's scary. It's
very
it's
scary.
so much easier to just follow the path. Okay, I'll go to high school and then I'll go to college. I'll pick this because, you know, in 5 years there's going to be a need of electricians, so they'll get paid good, and calculating every step instead of really like digging in and becoming naked and vulnerable and just being, you know, one with yourself and say, you know, I'm just going to share the essence of me and hope that people will receive it. And they will, because your intention is pure.
Right. And I think what you said, like, it actually does take a lot of courage to look inward, because people, I mean, I see this in therapy, but just in general, you know, if someone is hearing this and they're already established in their career, there's a lot of fear of looking at yourself and saying, what if I'm not living the life I'm supposed to be living? Because once you figure out that you're not, and you want to be doing something else, there's a lot of work, a lot of change, and that's scary, and all that stuff, getting out of your comfort zone that people are afraid to do. But, you know, when we look at midlife crisis, or people at the end of their life and they're unhappy, or now we talk about quarter life crisis, a lot of that has to do with not living the life that you wanted to or were meant to live. And you look back in your life like, I don't feel good about the life I lived. So you either take that risk of living your life and being unhappy, or you take the risk of realizing you're not living your life the way you want to, and I'll have to make changes, and it's going to be hard.
Yes.
But then I know I'll be living the life I want to live. That is going to be meaningful for
Absolutely.
me, and that makes the world a difference. And that's what I hope this book, and I know this book can help with a lot of people. And you know, I'm looking at the clock, and we're actually already out of time. The time flew by.
And I hope everybody feels free to write. I mean, I'm on Facebook, Instagram. If they have any questions, they can email. I'm so open. I've received so many emails asking they're not clear about the exercises. I'm definitely there to help guide in this process. We are co-writers, both of us. So
awesome. I hope people will do that. Check out the book, The I in Life by Sara Delpasand. I'll post a picture from today, tomorrow, that'll have her social media contacts on there in case you want to reach out to her. Sarah, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
We'll have to have you back soon.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you to everyone out there listening, to Amir here in the studio, and of course to Sarah who joined me tonight. You've been listening to In Session with Dr. Farid Holakouee. Have a wonderful night.